Alrighty, guys. I've started the recording. I will upload it as soon as this session is over. Can you guys hear me all right? Alrighty. So let me share my screen. Can you guys see my screen? Alright, so you can see my screen. So this is a practice exam. It has 30 multiple choice and 4 coding questions. All the answers are at the end. I will be uploading this to Piazza as soon as the session is over as well. So yeah, we're just going to power right through it. So I'm going to we're going to just work through this together and kind of talk about the each of the questions, and you guys can ask any questions about each of these as we go along. So question 1, what is printed with the following code, true or false? What do you guys think? We have somebody saying false. Any other guesses? Feel free to guess or not guess. It's completely up to you. False because yeah. Okay, so it looks like most of you guys got this. It is false. Essentially, the important thing to know here is that although 4 divided by 2 is an even division, it will still return a float. So this will always return a float even if the division is even, whereas floor division will always return an integer. So the return type of a float is not the same as the return type as an integer, therefore it will print false. Moving on to question 2. The following code will produce an error. Assume the user inputs 3 and 4, true or false. How are you guys feeling about number 2? We got a couple people saying false. All right, yeah, so it is false. There is no error in this code. The thing that was supposed to put you off is by default, as if you were just to input 3 here, it would be the string 3 because you're not wrapping it as an integer. But as you guys should know, you can multiply strings by integers. Excuse me, in Python. It will just kind of do a repeated concatenation. So if you had the string cat, you multiplied that string cat by 3, you would get cat, 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 just squished together. So now question 3, for any Boolean value b, the expression be or not be is always true. True or false? How do we feel about this one? Alrighty, we got 2 people saying true. Well, that is correct. The way you should really look at this problem is evaluate this expression by just plugging and chugging in the 2 potential Boolean values, true or false. And if we went through it, so true or not true is true or false, which is true, and false or not false, which is false or true, which is also true. So regardless if B is true or false, this will always be true. So 3 is true. So now with some slicing. The following code will print GMU is cool, true or false? Alright, I'm muted. Do you need to snack real quick?
No, I'm fine. I do need some tea though.
Okay. You wanna go? Oh, I'll just be here. Go get your tea. Can you grab my water bottle? I think it's on the floor by the couch. Alrighty, so we have somebody saying false. People are now saying false. Yes, that is correct. So it would actually print GMU not cool. The thing here is to understand slicing that if you have nothing before the colon, that just implies that you're going to start from wherever the container starts. And if you have nothing after the colon, it will just include all the way up to the ends of what that container is. And here, the ending is exclusive and the start is inclusive. So here, when it says to go from the start up until the 3rd index, it will not include the 3rd index. But when you tell it to start at the 6th index, it will start there. So this is exclusive, this is inclusive. Any questions on the first 4? Alrighty, I'm assuming there are no questions. You can type your questions out in the chat. You can even send me a direct message with your question if you don't want to just, type it in the chat. It's up to you. So now moving on to 5. Now this is more traditional true-false. So which of the following is logically equivalent to this? X is equivalent to Y equivalent to Z. Alrighty, good. So you guys are understanding that this is essentially comparing to make sure all 3 of these are equal, which means that you need the AND operator here. So X is equivalent to Y and Y is equivalent to Z. So yeah, pretty straightforward question. Again, if you guys, as I'm going through, if you guys have any questions about any of these, feel free to send me a direct message or just pop it in the chat and I will stop at any time. Because if you have the question, it's likely somebody else has it too, especially in the recording that I upload. Alrighty, what is printed by the following code?
Babe, are you fine?
You're dying.
Babe, I'm not dying. My tummy's just crazy.
Alright, so we have, seems like everybody, yeah, the general consensus is 18. That is good because the thing that was supposed to trip you up here is order of operations. Normally in math, you're like, oh, you would do the multiplication first. But if it's part of the equality operator, you would always simplify the right-hand side completely before multiplying it with what's on the left. It's the same thing for like if this was a division, all that good stuff. So yes, the correct answer is 18. So question 7, what is the output of the following code? So I'm going to I have to unzoom a bit for this because whoever formatted this was not thinking clearly, which was me. Can you guys see this? I'm hoping you guys can see this all right. All right, so yes. This one might take a little longer to fully read through what's happening, but feel free to shout out your answer in the chat once you guys have found it. Alrighty, we have our first brave soul saying C is the correct answer. How are other people feeling? We have another C. All right, well, the correct answer is C. So just to walk through this really quickly, the Python interpreter will start with the first function definition, then it will go down to the next, then it will go down to the next. It won't actually enter any of these until it's called. And then once it gets down here, it will read a function call to func1. It will go into func1. Func1 calls then func2. It will go here. It will first print Sam with a new line because if there's nothing here, it will automatically do a new line. So C has Sam and then a new line. And then function 2 calls 3. Func3 just prints Gandalf. Gandalf is printed. And then now that there's nothing left here, it will go back up to where it was called, which was up here. Now that there's nothing left here, it will go all the way back up to where it was called here. And it will go on to the next line of code here. it will print Frodo, but then not have a new line at the end. This gets rid of that new line. So C right here has Frodo, but then it just continues to wait on the same line. So then when it calls func2, it will print Sam and then move on to the next line here. So that's why Sam is on the same line. And then print Gandalf and then go in reverse here to where it was called, and then there's nothing left to do. Does this make sense to everybody? Any questions on this? I will say, for these like code tracing questions, I always would suggest saving those for the ends of your multiple choice, because each of the multiple choice questions is the same amount of points, and these do take a little longer, so you want to make sure you have like enough time to answer the easier ones as well. So moving on from this, how do you print Patrick in the following dictionary? Just the string Patrick here. Alrighty, so we have a couple people saying A. A is the correct answer, and the way to kind of work with this is always just, in my opinion, to work from left to right. So if we were to start from here and look at what my dict at the key SpongeBob will resolve to, well, this syntax, if you have a dictionary name and then in brackets a key, it will unlock the value. So this will simplify to the value of what the value is for the key SpongeBob. In this dictionary, this is the key, and the value is this entire list here. So we can imagine that this is just going to resolve to this list right here. And then if we were to index this list at the first element, as you can see, each of its elements is its own dictionary. So this is the 0th index. This is the first. So now my dict SpongeBob1 can be resolved to just this dictionary here. And if we grab its key, it will unlock the value, which is this list here. So now if we index this list at 1, 0, 1, we get Patrick. Does that make sense to everybody? I'm assuming it does. Alrighty. Again, you can always ask any questions you have. There's no such thing as a dumb question. You can send me a private message. I promise I won't share your name with the world. Okay, so question 9. What is not true about tuples? Interesting. So we're having a clash of people here. So, which of the following is not true, aka which of these statements is false? Are tuples immutable? Can you change a value in a tuple? You cannot, correct. Can you index a tuple? So if you wanted to grab the first element, can you say tuple name, square bracket, 0? You can index a tuple. The correct answer for 9 is B. Tuples are ordered. So just to talk about what ordering means in Python, these two statements go hand in hand together, B and C. If it is ordered, then you can index it. So like a list is ordered. The way it has to do with storing in memory. So in memory, it's sequentially stored, so you can index them based on their memory location. Things like dictionaries and sets, they are not ordered, so you cannot index them. However, a tuple is ordered, so you can index them. Yes, you should not mix up sets and tuples on the exam. That would be very unfortunate. So yes, if tuples are ordered, that means you can index them. Just like lists are orders, you can index them. Sets are not ordered, so you cannot index them. Dictionaries are not ordered, so you cannot index them. So any other questions about 9? Alrighty. So moving on to 10. What is the output of the following code? So tuples, just to reiterate, somebody sent me a direct message. Tuples are ordered. Yes, they are. Order does matter in a tuple. We have somebody saying B. Yeah, so it looks like everybody thinks it's B. The correct answer is B. It will just remove duplicates. That's what a set will do. Even if you define a set having all of these numbers, it will not store the set that way. The set will be like this. Now again, I did just write this in order. The order does not matter here. So actually, just to talk about ordering one more time, I'm just going to open that bad boy up. And so if I had a tuple 1, 2, 3, that does not equal 2, 1, 3. However, if you had a set 1, 2, 3, that is equivalent to this set. I'm struggling to type right now. 2, 1, 3. So if a data structure is ordered, the ordered matters. You can index these. The index matters. So the element at index 1 has to match the element at index 1 for them to be equal. However, for a container like a set or a dictionary that's unordered, you will have, it does not matter the order. It just matters that it contains the exact same number of elements and the exact same elements themselves. So if there's the integer 1 in this, there has to be the integer 1 in this. And for dictionaries, the keys and values have to be the same. So all key value pairs in dictionary A has to have all the same key value pairs in dictionary B. So now to go back to the exam. Any more questions on this? If not, we will be moving on to 11. Again, you can always type out and send me a direct message. So what is the output of the following code? The other answer choices are on the second page. If it's too small, I mean, there's nothing really I can do about it, to be honest, but just try your best to read what's going on here. Give me your rations. Oh my God, it's Chris Brown. E. So it appears we're having some conflicting answers. It looks like some people are saying D, some people are saying C. I'll give you guys like 30 seconds to really think about this one, because this can be a real noodle scratcher. Alrighty, so believe it or not, the answer to 11 is D. So why is it D? Well, let's examine this code. What is happening when the string 4 is passed in as X? Well, it will check, is the string 4 equal to the integer 4? It is not. So this will simplify to false. And then, so it's false or 5. 5 evaluates to true in Python. Any non-zero value will be true. So this right here, there is no input X that you can give it to make this statement be false. This will always read as true, and hot dog will just be printed no matter how you call this code, assuming there's not like a syntax error. But yeah, this will always trigger hot dog to be printed. There is probably a logic error in this person's code where they should have checked if x is equal to 4 or x is equal to 5, but they just said or 5, making this always evaluate to true. So the answer is D. It will print hot dog 3 times on new lines. Does that make sense to everybody? Alrighty, so real quick before we move on to the next one, what are the 3 types of errors? You can write them out in the chat. We just spoke about what type of error was in this code. Well, just to talk about the 3, we have, okay. Somebody sent me a direct message of them, but I'll just type them out in the chat. So the 3 types of errors we have. So somebody just said them. It is syntax, logic, and runtime. We got syntax errors, so that essentially, like, you forget a parenthesis or your grammar just isn't correct, and your code won't even start. Before you even try running it, it will stop and yell at you for your grammar. Logic, your code will start and end, but you'll get the wrong answer. So for instance, here you have a logic error because this will always print true. Like, it'll always go into the true block because you're not comparing x to 5 as well. And runtime, it will occur during runtime. So your code will start, but it won't finish. It will crash. So syntax won't even start. Runtime will start but not end, and logic starts and ends, but you won't get the right answer. Those are the 3 kind of high level errors you can get. So we've talked about types of syntax and logic errors. Does somebody want to give me an example of a runtime error? While true. An infinite loop. So I've actually heard conflicting answers of if an infinite loop is a runtime error or a logic error. I guess it depends on what you're saying. I guess in theory it should eventually crash at runtime. I know like Gradescope will have a timeout handler for you, but in theory it could run forever, right? Especially if your system's strong enough. Um, so I'd say the most common one is probably dividing by 0, right? If you have a function that you're supposed to divide 2 passed-in inputs, if one of those inputs is 0 and you try dividing it by 0, it will crash. That is a runtime error. While true, if your professors told you that was, then yes, but I don't know, that's kind of a, I've heard it go either way. So moving on. What is the output of the following code? Alrighty, so I'm getting some direct messages and some to everyone messages, and it looks like most everybody's saying C, which is good. So it will print out each character on a new line. It's important to just recognize that for this for loop, I is the index, whereas in this for loop, J is the element. So if it was for I in range length boba and you printed out I, it would print out, like, instead of mango, lychee, or taro, it would be 0, 1, 2. And to actually get mango, lychee, and taro with the range length loop, you have to say boba I. So this would actually grab the elements if you're using the range length for loop. But if it was just the simple for loop of for I in container, or for j in container, j is the element itself. So range length changes this variable to index. If you did not have range length, it would be the element instead. Does that make sense to everybody? I'm going to move on to question 13 now. What is the output of the following code? We have conflicted answers. So this is one of those tricky questions on the exam. Well, I would like to tell the people who chose D, syntax error, that you would have gotten this question wrong on the exam. It is actually C. You can create a tuple just by separating things by commas. So it would print out the class type of the variable x, which is a tuple. So anything comma separated will just become a tuple in Python. It's one of those annoying questions, one of those gotcha questions. It's just something that's good to know. I'm assuming there are no questions on this because I kind of just explained the whole thing about comma separated values are going to just automatically be formed into a tuple. Moving on to question 14. How can I get the string link in the following code? So that is just right here, just these characters, these 4 characters. Alrighty, it looks like most people are saying A right now. A is the correct answer. This is kind of one of those things where you should try and use process of elimination, because by doing so, you won't even have to really get to the slicing part, right? Because at first we need to say, okay, how can we get to the string that we need to abstract the string link from, like the substring link from? Well, we actually need to index twice, because grabbing just one, it will give us a list with the string inside as the only element. So we know we need to go a step further here. So we can automatically cross out B and D. And if we just look at the slicing here, I mean, this is just obviously wrong. So you can just blindly choose A, because that's what's going to slice the characters we need. Moving on to question 15 is one of the other what is printed when the following code is run. And I will give you guys a couple seconds on this one as well. Just go ahead and type your answer whenever you have it.
I know, this morning.
Alrighty, so we have some people still sending me direct messages, but we have, I think, one person saying, or a couple of people now saying D. The correct answer is D, yes. You will get an error because this is an infinite loop. You are not incrementing your guard, which is X, at all here. So you're setting X to 1729, and you're not changing it at all here. So this is essentially the loop while true, because 1729 will always be greater than 0. Thus, this will just infinitely increment, or just infinitely loop. Any questions on this one? So the error occurs. Somebody just sent me a direct message about why the error happens. Well, it's because you have an infinite loop here. X is not being incremented at all. 1729 will always be greater than 0. You're not changing X in the loop at all. Therefore, you have an infinite loop. Now, whether this crashes at runtime or goes infinitely, it depends on your system. I guess, either it will have an overflow and just wrap around to the other side. So once it gets to, like, let's say the biggest integer, like let's say y gets to the biggest integer possible. Some systems will just loop around to the smallest integer possible, so something like -4 billion or something like that, and then keep incrementing. It'll just infinitely loop like that. Or if it doesn't, then it will probably crash at runtime. So, moving on. You don't have to know that stuff, by the way. I was just rambling. Which of the following is not true about lists? Alrighty, it looks like most people are saying A, and A is correct. As we went on I went on that whole ramble about what ordering means in a container. These two kind of go hand in hand, so one of these has to be false. Since you can index a list, it must be ordered. So A is the correct answer, aka the false statements in these answers. So if you have any questions, again, just shoot them in the chat. Moving on to 17. Which of the following is not true about dictionaries? Alrighty, I got a couple people saying C. The correct answer is C. This is one of the properties of dictionaries where keys in a dictionary must be immutable data types. Immutable data types means data types that cannot change in value. You can alter a list. Lists are alterable, therefore not immutable. Now, a float and an integer can be used because they are primitive data types in the sense that you cannot change the value of 4 in a computer. 4 will always be 4, so you can just have that as a key. A list, you can change its elements, so you cannot have that. A tuple is an immutable data type. You cannot change the value of a tuple, so you can have that as a key. So only immutable data types can be the key of a dictionary. Any questions on that? You can always drop questions in the chat. Moving on to question 18. Which of the following creates a deep copy of this list? Alrighty, yeah, looks like most people are comfortable with this. Just directly saying deep equals LST will not create a deep copy. I'm just going to ramble about deep copies real quick because this is an important concept you guys must know. I'm sure you guys remember the whole thing about like aliasing and stuff like that. So if you had a list 1, 2, 3, and then you had try to create a deep copy of it, and just set it equal directly to LST. This website will actually show you exactly what's happening here. You created list which points to a location in memory where it has a list 1, 2, and 3. And when you create deep and just set it equal to LST, you're pointing at the exact same object, which means if you were to change LST, deep would also change. And if you were to change deep, LST would also change, which is pretty dangerous to have in your code. So if you were to just directly slice it by slicing the entire thing by just having a single colon here, that means slice everything from the start to the finish. If we were to look at this now, as you can see, they're pointing to two different objects in memory. So if you were to alter deep, list would not be changed. And if you were to alter list, deep would not be changed. Does that make sense to everybody? This is pretty, I'd say, important to know. If you were asked to make a deep copy of a list without on the exam, they'll probably not allow you to use slicing. And the way you would do that is literally just iterate through and copy over each element. So, you could say deep equals that, and then for I in LST, deep dot append I. And then, that's all you have to do, really. Just appends the most primitive data type. So as you can see here, they're now pointing to still two different lists in memory. And that goes for like multi-dimensional lists too. So if you had like a multi-dimensional list here like this, you would need to have a separate for loop going deeper into the most primitive data type. If you were to just copy this here, the memory would actually look kind of funky. It would have its own start of list, but then it would point to the same sublists as this one. So it's not a true deep copy. So moving on now. What is the output of the following code if the user inputs bananas? So they're inputting in here the string bananas. So it looks like most people are saying D. Let me see what other people are saying. Sorry about that. So yeah, the correct answer is D. The reason why, some people might think this is an index error, so they might think it will get down to here. If it actually did come down to here, then yes, this would have gone into here and prints out the index number is too big, but it won't even reach this val equals xs index line. Right here, when you say index equals int input, enter an index, this input enter the index will resolve to the string banana, and there is no integer representation of the string banana. So you would get a value error, which you are not catching here. Therefore, it will just crash, and you'll get an error. Does that make sense to everybody? Alrighty. By the way, when I'm rambling about random things, like even like these deep copy, you can ask any questions you have at all. I'm here for you guys. I'm getting paid to do this. I'm not just here out of the kindness of my heart, just doing my job. All right. So, question 20. Given the following code, what is the output? So most people are saying A. I will like to say there is a typo on this. I'm going to change this before I release it, but I put this here, like the this keyword. That is actually Java. It should be self, but we can assume that that typo was a mistake and there is a correct answer to this. So most of you were saying true to this. Now, unfortunately, the answer is going to be B, false, because a computer has no idea what a car is. So it has it knows what an integer is, it knows how to compare integers, strings, stuff like that, but since you created a custom data type car, whenever you try to resolve like something like this, you must define an equal function to determine that. But since there is no equal function, it will just look at their locations in memory, and they are not going to be created at the same location in memory. This might be like 0x0059. This could be like 0x0057. Like, they're not going to have the same locations in memory, therefore they're not going to be equivalents. We will go over very quickly at the end how to make like those equal classes and stuff and why they're super important, but just know that right now, since there is no equal function, so when I say equal function, oh wait, somebody asked, so say if car2 was initialized. Oh, that's an interesting question. What do you guys think? We got somebody saying, all right. I think her question is if this line of code, rather than initializing a new car object, just said car2 equals car1. So you guys are thinking it will be true. Well, to be completely honest, I don't know how to do this. Like, I don't know how this would work in Python either, so we're going to learn together. Class, whoopsies. We're just going to code up a very simple class. So class apple def init, we're going to give it self and then one parameter called x, and then say self.x equals x. So now here, if I say apple1 equals whoopsies, apple, and let's just pass in an integer. Down here, if I say apple2 equals apple1, this was your question, right? By the way, whoever asked this question, this is what you're referring to. Okay. Let's print out what happens if we check if apple1 is equal to apple2. It is, so they are pointing to the same apple instance in memory. That is a really good question. So moving on, excellent question. You know what, since we have this up, let's go ahead and let's just talk about classes real quick, because you need to know this for your exam. So real quick, class car, the init function is super important. So you have self, and then let's just say a make and a color to keep it simple. And then in here, you're going to just initialize each of the parameters here, the attributes. So self.make equals make, and self.color equals color. Down here, if you were to create a car1 equals, and then car, I'm going to capitalize SC. Let's call this a Honda and a blue Honda. And then car2 equals, whoopsies. Let's create the same car with the same parameters, but let's actually create something that can compare them to be equal. So any of these functions that you guys have learned about so far that have the double underscore, those are very important functions. So for instance, I'm sure you guys have learned seen at least the str or the equal function. Do these look familiar to you guys? Alrighty, so these are important because these are functions that are, you've seen string and lab. Yeah, so you should have seen these before. These are very important because for a bunch of reasons, but first let's talk about the init method. Every time you create a car object, so whatever your class name is, passed in with these two parameters, it is going to search the car class for the init method, and it is going to initialize this car to have these attributes. So this self keyword is super important. What this does is when car1 calls it, car1 is substituted in for self. So you're setting cars1 make to this make, and then car1's color to this color. Same with car2. When car2 calls it, it's going to be car2.make equals make, car2.color equals this color. So the init function is going to be implicitly called when you create a new object. It initializes the object. Now, what would happen right now if I was to print out car1? Do you guys know? Somebody's saying error. Let's see what happens. I'm going to just click last here. We get its location in memory. So it has to do with how we were comparing the objects before. The first thing it will do when I call a print method on an object is it will search the class for the string method. So once I define the string method, so to make it something more human readable, that's what the str method does. Now I can actually give something a little nicer. So I can print out, let's say this, or sorry, self dot, for the sake of making it short, let's just print out the make. So now if I was to run this code, I have an error because I am printing something. I should be returning this. My apologies. Rookie mistake, that's fine. So now if I was to click last here, it would give me something that's not just like object at memory location. It will give me something that makes sense. So print will automatically look for this, and if it's there, it will give you something more human readable. Now lastly, the equal function. So if I was to say def equal pass in self, I need to pass in one other parameter as well, other. And we compare these two objects by comparing each and every one of their attributes. So if self.make equals other.make and self.color is equal to other.color, only then will we return true. And then if it reaches this line, it's just going to be false. They're not equal. So it's very important that we compare each and every excuse me, each and every attribute to the other object. So now, how can you pass only one arguments when creating an object? When creating an object, you just return it on the line. So if you're at are you asking how do I create an object like this? Well, you can control however many parameters you want. You just wouldn't have that parameter there. You just add as many as you want here, and that's how many you're going to create. Now, you guys shouldn't worry. You can have multiple constructors and create different objects based on that of the same class, but don't worry about that right now. But for now, if you put one attribute, there will be an error. So are you saying, will this be an error right now, since this is asking for 2 and you're passing in 1? What do you guys think? If this was a test question right now, and it asked, will this line produce an error? What do you guys think? So it looks like most people are saying an error. And you guys would be correct. It needs the exact amount of arguments. So it's similar to calling a function, you can see it. Except self is invisible. A default value. Yes, you can. Let's see if I remember the syntax for this bad boy. Let's go ahead and throw in green here. I don't remember what the syntax is for Python, but you can. That is some. Yeah, so you can. This is the syntax. Same thing as a function. So now this would actually get created. So now this object of car1 has green because that is the default argument. Okay, well, anyways, back to the equal function. If I didn't have this equal function, let me just delete it real quick. If I didn't have this, and if I was to print car1 equals car2, and let me add again blue to make them equal, and visualize this execution. When I get to the last step, we get false, as showed on the practice exam. However, if I was to edit this code and actually add the equal function, now when we set them equal to each other, we get true, because we've compared each of their attributes, and they are the same objects, therefore it will return true. Does that make sense to everybody? These are kind of the three I'd say most important built-in functions that we'll search for. So init is when you create, string is when you want to print and actually see what the object is, equal can compare to custom objects. It needs these two because a computer knows what an integer, a list, a float is, but it has no idea what a car is. This is a custom data type. So without these, it will just look at its location in memory. So moving on. Are there any more questions on classes? Feel free to drop them in the chat. But moving on, what is the result of the following code? So it looks like most people got it. There are really 3 cases for modulus, right? So you have small modulus big, you have big modulus small, and then you have if the numbers are equal. If it is small mod big, it will always just be the small number. If it is big mod small, it will give you the remainder. And if it is 0, or if they're equal, so let's say y and z were equivalent, it would give you 0. So the answer right here is going to be 0. So if we were to look through this, we have 7 modulus 10. That's small mod big, so that would just be the small number. So 4 divided by 7 will yield 0. So the answer is A. So moving on to 22, what is the result of the following code? All right, most people are saying D, and D is correct. Yeah, there is no asterisk between the parenthesis and the Y. I know as humans, we will just be like, all right, multiply Y with whatever is simplified in the parentheses. Well, in Python, that means nothing, so this will be a syntax error. And what type of error is this, by the way? Syntax, logic, runtime. Yes, it is syntax. So this code won't even start. It'll yell at you right from the get-go. Moving on, 23, another code tracing. Nice. What is the result of the following code? Alrighty, so we have most people saying D. D is the correct answer. I guess you guys could have quickly, taken A and C out of the running since we know that. Sorry, yeah, since we know that the loop will only go 3 times because it will iterate over each key value pair and values, and there are 3 key value pairs, and counts will be incremented 1 per iteration. However, the main thing was if Kiwi's value would be incremented or not with this line here. So when we say for I in values, what would happen if you printed out I? So if you printed out I right here, you would just print out every single key. So during the first iteration, it will be apples, then kiwi, then mangoes. So is I ever going to equal 7? It will not. So it will check if apples equal 7, if kiwi equals 7, if mangoes equal 7. So I will never be incremented. The value 7, this will never change. So D is the correct answer. Now, if you wanted to make this correct code, you would have to say if values I. So to have the correct if statement, I'll just type it in the chat. If values I is equal to 7. That is what you would need. I just sent that as a direct message to somebody. So I'm going to type that again to everybody. If values I is equal to 7. You could also say dot values yes. So the syntax that I sent here, where it's a dictionary name and then key name in brackets, if you're comfortable with that syntax, you won't need to ever use any of those fancy like dot keys, dot values, dot items. But I mean, they're all good to know. But yeah, you could also say dot values. Okay. Moving on, assuming there are no more questions. What is the result of the following code? We have a brave soul saying B. So yes, the correct answer is B, because race car is a palindrome. If string 1 was not a palindrome, that means this would be false. A palindrome is essentially a word that is same forwards as it is backwards, so race car, they're the same. And what this string slicing does is it essentially starts from the beginning of the container to the end and walks in reverse order. So since race car is equal to race car, it will print true. So yes, there are potentially 3 parameters that can take for recursive palindrome use. I'm not sure what you mean by recursive palindrome. You're not using recursion in slicing. Slicing is just slicing. I mean, I haven't seen like the source code in Python, but they might use recursion in that. But slicing itself, you're just using this. Moving on to 25. What is a class in Python? So yeah, this one's pretty straightforward, just knowing that it is a blueprint for creating objects with similar attributes and behaviors. It's not a primitive data type that allows code reusability. It is not A, and it is not B. So moving on to 26. What keyword is used to create a class in Python? Now really think about this one, guys. This is a hard one. Oh wow, you guys got it. Wow. You guys are all gonna get 100% on this final. You guys have nothing to worry about. What is the purpose of the init method in a Python class? So we actually just talked about this. Yeah, so it just initializes a class objects with the values you pass in. Alrighty. I mean, I went over these past three pretty quickly, but if you have any questions on them, feel free to send me a direct message. Moving on to 28, another output, and ooh, it's recursion. I know you guys love recursion. So, what is the output of the following code? So it looks like most people are saying D. Is everybody comfortable as to why it's D versus C? Is everybody fully comfortable with this? I'm going to assume that everybody's okay. So somebody is not, which means that the people watching the recording are probably also confused. So I'm going to, as fast as I can, type this code up. Bear with me, guys, but the short answer is that uh, when you have a bunch of recursive calls, it builds upon a stack, and then once you're done with it, it will pop off in reverse order, and it will keep each of those. Each recursive call will be associated with a specific return value, and those will get added in reverse order since you are stacking up and then popping off in reverse order. But that will make more sense in Python Visualizer because they have uh, a visual for this. So I do have a quick question for the chat. Why am I returning an empty list here? Why can't I return 0? Any brave soul know the answer to that question? That's the base case. Yes, but why can my base case not be 0 here? Why must it be an empty list? Like, why can't I just return 0? Or just have an empty return statement? Can I add 0 to a list? Yes, they have to be the same data type. So, pretty much, if I was counting the even numbers, then I could have, it should be 0. It can't be an empty list. But since I am building a list like this, it must be of the same data type. So here are my recursive calls. Well, first off, does everybody understand what is happening with this recursive code here? Like, should I just go over absolutely everything, or do you want me to just explain the answer? What do you guys want? Okay, we will just go over everything. So obviously the function that what this is trying to accomplish is just remove all the odd numbers in a list. So here is our recursive case, or our base case, where once our list is empty, once our list is empty, we will just return 0. And these are our recursive cases. So while there are still numbers in this list, we're going to evaluate if it's even or not. If it is even, we are going to start building our list recursively. If it is not, we're not going to count that as part of our list and just continue slicing our list. So when you have a loop, like when you have a list and you want to iterate over it with a for loop, you would start here, like imagine my little pointer is an arrow. You'll start here, then you'll go to the next one, then you'll go to the next one, then you'll go to the next one, so on and so forth. To recursively iterate through this list, you would always be pointing at this location and then just delete elements. So you'll be pointing here, then move everything down. You'll be pointing here, then move everything down, so on and so forth until you have iterated through the entire list and the list is now empty. So, I mean, that pretty much covers at a high level what's happening here. Some people didn't understand what's going on with this, but in Python, if you have a list 1 and you add it to a list 2, that will give you a list 1 and 2. That's just something you can do in Python, so that is how we're recursively building this. And as you can see, I'm always checking that first element as well as removing it. So that's kind of what's going on here. So I'm going to check this 1. If it's even, I'm going to start building the list with it. If it's not, I'm going to remove it and just carry on with my life. So now, the whole visual I was talking about, I scroll down here. So I actually have an error in my code somewhere. Let's see. Turn magic. Am I blind? I'll be completely honest, I'm not seeing the error right now. Maybe if I step through it. So once I call the function here, the stack is getting smaller and wait, the stack has stopped getting smaller. Or the list has stopped getting smaller once I found an even number. Why is that? Yeah, so that's not supposed to happen. Does anybody in the chat see what's going wrong here? I'm going to play around with this because I honestly do not. Oh my gosh, guys, oh my goodness. The parameter name is X is up here and I'm just checking LST like a fool. All right, so let's pretend this didn't happen, all right? Let's pretend that let's pretend this didn't happen. So as I was saying, there we go, worked perfectly, just as planned. Now, so as you can see, every single recursive call to magic is going to be added to this call frame here. So look, a call, boom, added to the stack. Each of these calls are not going to start returning anything immediately. It's going to progressively build up over time. And for every even number, this return addition will be associated with that call. So once I get all the way down to the ends of my stack, and we have hit our base case, which is going to be an empty list here. Now we've reached our base case, aka no more recursive calls. We're up in here. It's just going to return a list. So now we start popping off. So this will pop off. It'll read this, pop off, read this, pop off, which is why it's going in reverse order. Although 2 is the first one we saw here, 6 is the first return value we're going to read. So as you can see here, I can continue clicking next. We have an empty list because that's our return value for our base case. Then we have a return value of 6. Then it's going to read the number 5. And that's obviously not even, so our return value is still a list of 6. Now for our next one, 4 is even, so it's going to take the list 4 and add it to the list 6, so our return value is now 6, 4, so on and so forth. So yeah, I personally learned recursion by just playing around with it and looking how the stack worked in Python Visualizer. Does this make sense to everybody? Alrighty, yes. Now please just forget that whole situation that happened there. That was part of the plan. So moving on to 29. Which method is automatically called when you use the print function on an instance of a class? We actually just talked about this. Yes, you guys were listening. It will call the str function. Okay, so we have a question. If LST0 is behind it, goes in descending order. Okay, so yeah, the correct answer is B. I mean, this is just like you have to know this answer, not really an explanation. When we called prints, this might trick you, but that's not a function. It's going to be the string representation of an object, str. Moving on to question 30, write a function signature that takes in 3 parameters, height, width, and length. If height is not provided, set it to 10. So yeah, most people are saying, oh, we have some conflicting answers here. So the correct answer to this is going to be C. You absolutely have to have your default parameters at the end. Although I kind of listed them out here as height, width, and length, since I said height is not provided, making it a default parameter, it has to go at the end. You cannot have a default parameter before. So moving on to question, or an extra credit question. Which of the following evaluates, which of the following evaluates to true? Oh yes, which of the following evaluates to true? Assume they all point on the same line for some reason. I don't know what I mean by this, to be honest, but let's just look at these answer choices. What is the output of this code? Oh, that says prints, not points. I cannot read. Yeah, pretend they print on the same line. We have somebody saying B. Multiple people saying B. Well, yes, the correct answer is B. This has to go with the whole ordered versus unordered. So here, in this case, all of the ordered uh, containers like lists and tuples will be false, whereas these guys will be true, the unordered ones, because all that matters for these is that they have the same stuff. The order does not matter. AKA, you cannot index these, but you can index the ordered ones. So now we got some fun coding questions. Now for these, for the sake of time, I'm not just gonna make you guys, or let me ask you guys, do you guys want some time to try these on your own before I go over them, or would you rather me just go over them? Okay, I'll give you guys some time to try them. In fact, I'm gonna put some time restraints on them so you kind of feel the pressure of like you're in the exam. So for this number one, I will give you guys till 1:20 p.m. So for those of you watching the video, I refuse to edit videos, so you're just gonna have to skip ahead 8 minutes. Sorry about that, but that's how it is. So I'll explain this question real quickly. So you're gonna write a function called find word values list that takes in a list of strings and a dictionary of point values for various characters. Return a parallel list to the list of strings for the point value for each word. So first of all, what a parallel list is, this list is parallel to this one, meaning that this first element is associated with the point value of the first word. The second element is associated with the second element here. Third, they're parallel in that manner. Now, how to calculate each word's value? You will be given this dictionary. It's this hard-coded dictionary. You're only checking A, B, E, O, and P with these specific values. So in cucumber, if we looked at cucumber, the only word in here, or the only letters in here are E and B. E has the value of 0, so 0 plus 0 is 0. But B has the value of 2, so that's why you have 2 in here. The 20 here will be yielded because of the O plus the P. So you have 20 for telephone, so on and so forth. I'm going to give you guys till 1:20 to do this, and then I'm going to go over the solution then. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the chat or direct message me, but I will be giving extremely vague answers as if this was an actual exam. Good luck. So I just shared the test case in the chat to everybody, just so you don't have to type it out. And by the way, I will be uploading, again, this practice exam with the solutions, and I'll also include a code file that already has the solutions in it, just so it's a little less annoying for you guys. So again, you guys have 4 minutes. So some of you guys have been sending me your solutions via direct message. I can just eyeball them for you. Obviously, the best way is to actually test them out with the test case, but I can eyeball them. And so far, it's looking good. So you guys have about 1 minute, and then I will go over the answer. Alrighty, so it is 1:20 now. How many of you guys were able to come up with a solution, or at least come close to getting a solution? Alright, so just to power through a solution real quick, the algorithm I used, oopsies, the answer is here. Do I have, okay, so the answer, I actually have, my bad. So return, let's just leave it empty for now. So the algorithm I'm running here is, it is important to realize that you can view a string like a list of characters. So this could be seen as a two-dimensional array where each sublist is going to be a list of characters, but the only difference being that strings are immutable and lists are mutable, obviously. But you're going to need a nested loop to grab each of these characters and check for its value within the dictionary of values. So the first thing I'm going to do, obviously, is create a results list. This will just be whatever I'm returning at the end. And then I'm going to iterate through the list of characters. So I'm going to say for I in range length LST. Right now, if I was to print out it would print out 0, 1, 2, and 3. If I was to print out LSTI, it would say cucumber, telephone, potato, giraffe. Right now, I'm going to say result.append 0. I'll explain why in a second. And then this is where I'm going to start iterating through each of the characters. So I'm going to say for J in LSTI, because LSTI is going to be each of these strings themselves, not just their index. So during the first iteration, LSTI will be cucumber. And I'm going to use the in operator on a dictionary. So if J in dict, I'm going to actually add that results to, or the results at that current iteration is going to add the value associated with that key in the key value pair. And then obviously you want to return results. So what this is doing is, while you're first iterating over the first word, so during our first iteration, LSTI will be cucumber. You're going to check J iterating through LSTI will represent each of the characters. So the first iteration will be C, then U, then M, so on and so forth. The reason I'm appending 0 first is because I want to have a value to be able to add for. Because during our first iteration, up until this line here, result is just 0. If I didn't have this line when we entered here, what am I going to add result to? Because result right now is just an empty list. So for every iteration, so for every I in LST, that means however many words are going to be in here, I'm just going to create a 0. I'm going to append a 0 to that parallel list so I can, actually create a number to add against. And also we do need that 0 here in case there's a word that has no value. There could be a word that doesn't have any of these letters, therefore no value. So I will be uploading the solution, obviously with the code. I'll be uploading this file itself later. Does anybody have any questions on this specific one? So shall we move on to the next one? All right, I'm assuming we can just move on to the next one here. We're just going to stay in here, pretend we don't see this, guys. All right. I'm just going to delete the solutions for now. Okay, so question number 2 is called gravitate. So you're going to be given a two-dimensional list of numbers and a direction. For each of these sublists, you want to gravitate each of their elements into the direction and find their sum. So if you were to gravitate this sublist to the left, you would move all of these numbers to the leftmost elements, finding their sum, and be making each of these others 0. So right here, as you can see, we have 3 plus 2 plus 1, which is 6. So this becomes a 6. We've squished everything down to the left, making all the other elements 0. And subsequently with this as well, squish all these elements to the left. And it's the same thing for the right, just the last index instead. Does this question make sense to you guys? Alrighty. Do you guys want to attempt this one, or shall we just go over the solution? Alrighty, I will give you guys till 35. This is one is a little bit more tricky, so you guys have until 1:35. So for those of you watching the recording, go ahead 10 minutes.
today's job market. And I'm not saying this to be a Debbie Downer. I'm not telling this because I want to make you feel bad. This is just the reality. Now, 2023, you can't be too picky what your next job's going to be. Last couple of years, the power has shifted back to the companies because there's such a surplus of talent out there. Sometimes the right next opportunity might be a pay cut, might not be as big of a jump as you expect, but that's okay as long as you keep the long game in mind. So what I'm telling all my friends and my clients right now who are looking for a new job is
So you guys have about 5 more minutes. Some of you have sent me direct messages with your solutions, and so far they all look pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the question, obviously, but
this is Oklahoma City Thunder player Josh Giddey.
I guess the question, and I completely understand you don't want to know about it, but
When pressed by local media, give your cluster with the question, what exactly?
good luck this season. You want to Sacramento for a game, so best of luck. We're going to come up at once. Take care of business.
It's because of videos like these and suggestive pictures such as these that have popped up recently. Giddey, at 19, was photographed multiple times with a minor. Now he's being investigated by the NBA.
Something like that. From the club. Me and my girl gotta head back to mine.
Since these allegations came to light, Giddey has remained eligible to play. The bigger question, where does the league go from here? Via CBS News and a since deleted post, an anonymous social media user said a girl who was seen with Giddey in videos and
After.
Photographs was a high school junior at the time. The social media account has since been deactivated. Since the news broke, Giddy has turned comments off on his Instagram account, which has over 500,000 followers. NBA spokesman Mike Bass, when asked for comment, gave a short answer to the Associated Press. We're looking into full-time NBA center Anthony Bogut, who is also Australian, commented on the matter. Speaking of his podcast, Bogut would say, "It's very hard to comment until you have a result on the investigation. I just want to put out there, if Josh was 19 or 20 and knowingly seeking out a 15-year-old girl, absolutely despicable behavior, I'm strongly against it." He'd then say, "I don't think this is the..." From what I
Again, the question.
This is Oklahoma City Thunder player Josh Giddey.
I get the question, guy, and I completely understand you guys want to know about it, but just right now, I don't think.
What do I need to say?
Obviously, I mean, that's probably what his lawyers told him. I hope it's not true, but I mean, yeah, we'll see.
Mm-hmm. Did you send this?
Alrighty, so I'm assuming some of you guys were able to get at least close to a solution. I know a bunch of you guys have gotten a solution based on my eyeballing of your code. Obviously, the best way to do is actually test it. So the algorithm I'm going to use, and what pretty much everybody who sent me a solution used, is you're going to traverse each sublist while simultaneously calculating the sum of that sublist while setting each of the elements to 0. Then at the end of that, based on the direction you're given, you are going to either set the first or last index to that sum. So I'm just going to start by directly, whoopsies, I don't know why I'm in all caps, for I in range length of nums. So now we're iterating through the multi-dimensional list of integers. I'm going to create a sum variable. So I'm going to set summy equal to 0. This variable will be keeping track of each sublist's sum. Now the reason I'm instantiating it within the for loop, excuse me, is so I can actually have a new sum for each of these sublists. If you initialize summy outside, then the sum of this sublist will get carried on to the sum of this sublist, so on and so forth. So you want to initialize it within the for loop so it's new every time. Now, next, we are going to actually start iterating through each of these sublists, where I said we're going to simultaneously set each of these to 0 while calculating a sum. So for j in range length nums I, we are going to say summy plus equals nums at, whoopsies, nums at I, j. Nums ij is going to be these specific numbers here. So 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, and 6 on the second iteration. And then we're going to set that nums ij now equal to 0. So with that, we have now calculated the sum of a sublist, store that in a variable called summy, and have deleted, or not deleted, but set all of these values to 0. So now the next step before we go on to the next sublist is to check the direction and set the solution based on that. So if direction equals left, we are going to say nums at I 0, since we are going to be setting the leftmost elements, so the 0th elements or index, to the sum. So equals summy. And if it's not left, then it must be right. So now we're going to set nums at I -1 equal to summy. And that is really the entire solution there. So return, what am I returning? Nums. You're making in-place modifications. So I do think this was kind of straightforward as long as you got your algorithm down. I do think it's important that you think of the algorithm before actually coding, or else it can get really sloppy and it's hard to debug. I'm assuming you guys know about negative indexing. So the negative first index of any length list is going to be the last elements. -2 will be the second to last element. -3, third to last, so on and so forth. So yeah, do you guys have any questions on this? Again, I'll be uploading this to I will be uploading this file, this video, everything to Piazza. Alrighty, we're going to move on to frequency. Now, this was actually a question that was very similar to something on last semester's final exam. So we're going to calculate the frequency of every character in a given string. So the frequency, and kind of, place it into a dictionary of p-value pairs. So the frequency of google.com in a dictionary, you have the keys as the characters and the values of how many times they occur in the string. So the G occurs twice, the O occurs 3 times, the L once, E once, the dot once, so on and so forth. So I'm going to assume you guys want to challenge yourselves again, and I will give you until 150 to tackle this question. Yeah, 150, that sounds good. So for those of you watching the video, go ahead to 10 minutes and see the solution if you want to. I just sent a direct message accidentally. I need to send that to everybody. All right. So good luck. I will see you at 150. And then I get off here at 2, so... I can also check the Google one. It tells me it's like 1.9 miles away, and then the map tells me it's 1.7 miles away. What the heck? Van Express, babe. It does you like Van Express. This one's closer, but further. It's interesting. Yeah, it's so weird. So I'll spend this 10 minutes finding the closest neighborhood to us. Baby, if you would tell me else, you would tell me too. I just suggested it because we were thinking about yesterday, so. Might just go to the other one because it's a more chill drive.
Yeah.
I calculate the gas. There's a speed trap. Good thing I don't speed. Oh, you need to stop at the dentist, babe. Do you need a haircut, babe?
Just braided my hair because it was so dangling. That's how I was doing in the bathroom.
Your hair looks amazing. I don't know what you're talking about. Do you want to take a train? It's literally quicker to walk.
Yeah, man. Just walk at this point.
It's pretty funny.
John, give me a few minutes.
Okay. Somebody send me a solution. X for character, if character and frequency. Yeah. That is the perfect solution.
But yeah, babe, if you're feeling anything else, tell me.
Alright, you guys have 6 minutes left. Some of you guys have sent me some pretty amazing solutions, so that's good. Again, if you do have any questions, you can always ask, but I will be extremely vague as if you are taking an exam. And somebody else just sent me their solution. I'm not going to say who, but I am going to critique this out loud. Let's see what they're doing. All right. Yeah, I mean, that looks good. So whoever just sent me that, I'm not going to respond via direct message. You're hearing it here and now that your solution looks good. just going to go over the solutions to the last one because we don't have time. Let me look at the solutions to the last one.
Let's just don't be saying.
I can take a picture of any moment.
Where are these?
I'm going to set up to type these so I can go faster. Oh my goodness, Spot, relax. You're okay. Alrighty, it is 50. I'm going to be going over the solution to frequency now. And I'm also just going to go ahead and go through the solution of file IO because this session does only go till 2. So I will just code directly through that. I will mention, though, that there was file IO on the last final exam for CS112. So it might be good to know basic file IO. So going for frequency. So this was, a lot of people did send me good solutions to this. So the algorithm was essentially to just traverse through the string. If the character exists in your dictionary, increment its value. If it doesn't, create a new key value pair where the value is 1 and the key is the character. So let's create a results dictionary, which we're returning at the end. You're going to say for I in Word. And as I've said before, a string is essentially a list of characters. You can assume that, your first iteration is G, then O, then O. That's what I is going to be. And you're going to use the in operator. So the in operator against a dictionary will traverse all of the keys. So we'll check if a key exists in the dictionary. So let's say if I not in results. So this is the case that this is the first time we're seeing a character. I'm going to create the key value pair. So set it equal to 1 because it's the first time I'm seeing it. So the syntax here, dictionary name at the key will resolve to the value, and we're setting the value equal to 1. And if we have not seen it, or if we have seen it, so this means it is in results, I'm just going to say else, and I'm going to increment results because result has already been seen. And I mean, this is the entire solution right here. Just going to return results at the end. If I can type today, so return results. Does this make sense to everybody? You can use like .get and all that fancy stuff, but I mean, I personally just stick to the syntax because you can do all of that with the dictionary name, key name, and value. Really quickly about this syntax, if you have the dictionary name, the key name, and the value, what this will do is it will either create a new key value pair if this key value pair does not exist within the dictionary, but if it does exist within the dictionary, it will overwrite it with whatever you're doing to the value. Now, I do have a quick question for you guys. Can you change a key in a dictionary? Correct. Okay. Just making sure you guys knew. So now I'm going to talk about this, and then I'm just going to go over the solution. So this is a function called file.io that takes in a file. Your goal is to write a new file that is formatted as follows. So your input file will look like this. It will have a header that says fun math questions, and it will have a certain amount of lines underneath it. However, these lines are formatted the same way, with the same words, with this word being a number, this word being a operands, and then another number, another operands, and another number. And your output should say results with a colon, space, and then whatever the math equation is up here. So the real question is, am I prepared? Do I have this actually already coded up? What is that? Okay, so I already have this coded up. Excellent. So I don't have to spend too much time with this. Wait, really quickly. So let's just get rid of the results for now. Okay, so back to the code. So again, there was a file.io coding question on the previous final exam for CS112. So, I mean, you guys should try to get comfortable with this. As for the solution, the first thing you guys should always do is, actually open the file. So what we're doing here is we're going to open a file and then write to a new file. So I'm going to create a file pointer called input file and open whatever file is being passed in. So open fname in the mode. What mode should I open this up in, guys? Correct, we are going to read it. Now we are going to create an output file pointer and set that equal to open here. I want to create a, did I say this in the question? New file this. Okay, so I didn't, but I'm just going to create a new file. We're going to call it results.txt. So this is just saying once I run this file, it is going to create a new file called result.txt, and we're going to open this in the W, which is write. So which of these will yield an error if the file does not exist? So yes, R. So R needs to exist. If you're trying to read something, it must exist. For write, if it doesn't exist, it will create a new file for us. If it does exist, it'll just overwrite it. So moving on there. The very first thing I'm going to do, and this is kind of like a cheat code in my opinion, is this. Okay, this is it. Is to use read line just to skip any header you have. So if, excuse me, if I was to say input file and then inputs file and then just say dot read line, this will straight up just read over the first line. So a lot of you guys might be like looking at this and getting annoyed with that line, like how can I just skip it and move on to the actual stuff I need to work on? Well, this is how you'll do it. When you first initialize input file, you can imagine it as a pointer to this first line. It is looking at this first line currently. So as soon as it says input file dot read line, what it will do is it will move down here. So now whenever you're working with the pointer input file, it will be starting at line 2. I am saying pointer. Now there are no actual traditional pointers in Python, but that's just, I guess, an easier way to explain it right now. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the contents from the file pointer input file and create a list out of it so it's easier to traverse. I'm going to say input list, since I'm creating a list version of it, and set that equal to input file dot read lines. Does anybody know what read lines is going to do? What read lines does, it will make a list where every element is going to be a line in the list. So lines 2 through 5 will be our list, where the first element is this entire thing as a string, the second will be this entire thing as a string, so on and so forth. So now that I have a nice friendly list that we all are comfortable with, I can say for I in input list, and I'm just going to directly start formatting everything for each line. So I'm going to, since we have a list of strings, the first thing I'm going to do to make it easy to index each of these strings is just split it. So if I say I equals I dot split, we are, who knows what the split function will do here? the split function on a string will split by whatever you feed it in. So yes, it will make a new list. So what we're doing is we're taking each of the strings and making a sublist within that big list. So now, if we are working on this first line here, rather than a string is now going to be a list which is separated by spaces. So this now the word what's will be our first elements, then the will be second, so on and so forth. And since we passed in nothing, it will be separated by spaces. If I wanted to separate it by like the character U, for instance, I can pass in a character U. That's kind of weird, but you can do whatever you want with this really. But since I am splitting it by spaces, it will be easier to index stuff. Since I know that num1 will always be at I4, right? Because at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, all of these numbers are located, and then so on and so forth with these other numbers as well. It is very important I cast it to an integer, because if I just set them equal to that I at that index, they will still be strings. So I'm going to cast them to an integer immediately so I can do math with them. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is take care of step 1, which has to do with, the first operand you have here. So I'm going to check if I at 5 is going to be equal to multiplied. Then I will say num1 times equals num2. And if it's not multiplied, then we can assume that it is going to be division. Something about these files here is that the first operand will always be multiply or divide, and the second will always be plus or minus. So here we can just say else and assume it's going to be divided. So else, I'm going to directly divide these two numbers. Oopsie daisy. Wait, no, that was correct. And then step 2. So this is checking the second operand. So this is if, I believe that is going to be the 8th one. So if I8 is equal to plus, we are going to say num1 plus equals num3, else we're going to say num1 minus equals num3. Now keep in mind how I am storing everything into num1. So we'll start with num1 by multiplying or dividing something to it, and then we're going to add or subtract something to it. So by only using num1, I don't have to create a new variable. Either way is fine. You're just creating one extra variable. It's not going to take up that much space in memory, but I am using that assignment equal operators just so I can all store num1. So num1 is what I'm going to be using. So now the very last thing I'm going to need to do here inside this loop is actually write this line to our new file. So I'm going to be saying output file. This is the output file we created above. This output file here, result.txt. Output file dot write. And then the format was result with a capital R, a colon, a space, and then I'm going to squish the actual num1, which calculated all of our stuff, but I am going to have to cast it to a string first. So I can concatenate it here with that plus. So we got num1. And then lastly, I'm going to add a new line because we want each of our lines to be, or for our output file, we want each of them to be on new lines. This is almost the entire thing. Lastly, we do want to actually close. So input file dot close and output file dot close. Close all of your file pointers. That's very important. Those are points you do not want to lose on the exam. And this will kind of go through and do all of our process for us. So I will say that the question on last semester's final was not as robust. You didn't have to pick apart a string, check several different indices for this, but it was just knowing and being comfortable with opening a file, writing to a file, maybe what some of the functions would do. These would really help you out. So yeah, does anybody have any questions on this? My laptop is about to die, but it is over time. I'm going to assume nobody has questions. I will upload this to Piazza. Where to put file.close? Put file.close as soon as you are done using the file pointer. By practice, you typically just throw them all at the ends of your function. Just throw them at the end of your function. If this meeting does end randomly, it's because my laptop died, but I can answer any last-minute questions you guys have until my laptop dies. I'm not sure if this was a typo, but was intentional to initialize num1 3 times. Did I initialize num1 3 times? That was a typo. It absolutely was a typo. It's supposed to be num1, num2, and num3. Alrighty. I'm assuming you guys have no other questions. If you do, you can always post questions on Piazza as well, like a final exam review question. But I will be uploading a completed file, this final exam practice.py, to Blackboard. I'll be uploading this PDF to Blackboard. It has all the questions, and then all the solutions are at the end. I even have screenshots of the code. And this video will also be uploaded. So I am going to end the meeting now. So if you guys have any questions, just ask on Piazza.